friend.
Hey, how are you?
I am feeling productive and focused today. What about you?
Same.
Good. Yesterday, or actually Monday, we released an episode
hmm
that was all about our thoughts regarding whether or not Joe Biden should step down in Project 2025. We will link that down below. Although this series is not necessarily in sequential order, we did at the time of filming that not know that in a few days later there was going to be violence perpetrated against Donald Trump. And so we did not include that in that episode. We're going to talk about that today as well as a bit about the Republican National Convention. But let's start with the gunshots that rang out at the Trump rally. When you saw that coming down your timeline or your news feed, what were your first thoughts, Em?
So initially I thought it was fake, which just kind of shows, showed me how sick where we all are. It
Agree.
looked fake. It was totally out of context. It was on the weekend and I wasn't on my phone that much.
Yeah.
And so I think I saw it on Instagram and then just the way I think I saw it from Rolling Stone or something. And then it didn't seem right. So I ignored it for a second. And then I went back and checked CNN. What about you?
Same, because I think one of the first images I saw was him like with his fist up.
Yes,
So
me
that for
too.
right. So that for me, I was like, okay, is this one of those deep fakes that are now being created by AI? And I also thought to myself, is that blood on his face? Did he get shot? I it was bewilderment for me from top to bottom. But then we started to learn things about the shooter.
Mhm. Except we don't know that much about the shooter.
Yeah. Well, what do we know?
We know he's a young man, a young white man from Pennsylvania. We know that he was 20. We know that he had graduated from high school, was a little bit of an outcast in high school, was a registered Republican, but had donated a small amount of money a couple of years ago to a progressive organization or cause. We know his father purchased the gun and that they were like a gun family.
And it was an assault rifle.
hmm
All right. So then that now gets us to the conversation around guns. And we know that historically, the Republican Party, as we've said here before, is a party of law and order and gun toting. They are the party that is in the NRA's back pocket as well. And so they love their guns over there. And I am not making light of political violence. It's not new in this country. And I would not have wanted what happened to happen. Clearly, I think no one would have wanted that, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump. But it is a bit ironic to me to think that the very weapon that we are talking about having either banned or greater restrictions around is what was used against him.
Yeah, and the thing that's really confusing to me about the like narrative that's emerging on the right in particular is that instead of talking about gun safety or why did this young man have access to an AR-15, instead talking about how powerful Donald Trump is.
Oh, do you mean like the martyrdom that's began to
And that
happen?
God saved him.
I have never heard Jesus, scriptures, the Bible, and God spoken more outside of a church setting than at the RNC last night. So let me just insert that here and then we can move on. And it's really giving Gilead from The Handmaid's Tale, because the way these lawmakers so easily weave like this Christian nationalist rhetoric into talking points is scary. But yes, I have also heard that as well.
Yeah, the whole thing is so deeply disturbing to me, and I imagine many other people. And I think really disheartening for all of us who are engaged in the political and advocacy process.
Absolutely. And we used to say this thing at the ACLU, which was that I used to be on the board of the DC affiliate, and it was that we protect speech, especially speech that we don't agree with, because when they come for that speech, next they'll come for ours. And so, what I thought was very much to your point, if this is what has happened to Donald Trump, what could happen to Biden? What could happen to Kamala Harris? What could happen to other people? This country is not new to political violence, as I've already said. We have lived through many assassinations and assassination attempts. But to know that that's where we are, yet once again on the political landscape, it's frightening. And I was actually afraid when I saw it, because I thought to myself, those of us who are on the front lines of justice and talking about these things, are any of us actually safe?
Yeah, I thought that as well. And I also kind of, and I thought this after January 6th as well.
Yeah.
And I had heard kind of rumors that the Secret Service kind of over the last, however, 4 years since they've had to be, oh no, excuse me, last 8 years, has not enjoyed protecting Donald Trump or President Trump, because of things he says, or he changes the plan so that it's really hard to do advance. I'm
Okay.
not saying that's what happened at this event, but it made me question kind of these times where we think we're safe,
Yeah.
right? Because we can't ever say we're safe or something is resolute, but these times where we think we're safer, we think that there's been advance done, there's a lot of security. Are we actually less safe?
Yeah. Well, I think what this showed us and reminded us was the harms that come from inflammatory rhetoric. And what's now being spun is a comment that Biden made, which was that we have to put Donald Trump in the bullseye, and the Republicans saying, well, that actually is, it was an incitement of violence on Biden's part. What do you think about that comment, Em?
I don't think Biden would intentionally incite violence against anyone, unless it was in an act of war. As I think I've said this before, but as my friend Laura says, all presidents are war criminals, right? So, um, I don't think that's what Biden intended, but in the context of what happened, I can see how it's inflammatory, and everything now is inflammatory.
I thought it was a stretch. I did. I mean, obviously he's talking about, as far as his comments are concerned, his policies are concerned, like he is the political target around campaigning. And I honestly think, not that anybody's playing fair, especially not the Republicans, but I thought it was an unfair comparison compared to some of the things that.
Well, right. I mean, and that's what we're trying not to do, right? Because I think President Trump has never played by the rules.
Ever,
And
and that's how they like them.
right. And he said really inflammatory things from the get-go. He asked people to lynch Vice President Pence, right? And we kind of, as a country, we forget some of these things that Trump has said, because who could remember all the things he said?
Right.
Um, and President Biden said something that could be interpreted in a way, and it's being spun. But the Democrats and the Republicans are playing different games right now.
Oh, what do you mean by that? Say more.
Well, my friend Peter said the Republicans are street fighters and the Democrats aren't.
Mm.
And I thought that was an interesting kind of image, that in their effort to be by the books, which I mean, as lawyers, we can appreciate, they haven't been nimble enough to respond to the populace. I would put it that way.
Yeah. And it's kind of like how continuing to say that's not fair, that's not how we do things, that's against the rules, gets us nowhere. And I said that around the impeachment, obviously, honestly, because I knew that he would get to the other side of it. And I thought to myself, although there are many grounds for him to be impeached, if this does not happen, it is going to be a total nightmare for the party. And it is just going to embolden him, and it is going to further rile and bolster his base. And that arguably is what has happened. And so, yes, like Lil Wayne has this saying where he says, "What's a goon to a goblin?" Like you're going to have to rise to the level of what is in front of you of the opponent. Now, doesn't mean you play dirty. I don't know. I'm not a political scientist, but what I can say right now is that they are losing. So where do we go from here? Post Trump being shot, and knowing that we are, trucking ahead to an election in November, how should the world just kind of categorize what is happening right now?
I mean, I don't know. I think that the conversations about guns has to keep happening. Why do we have access to AR-15s? Right? Even I sometimes stay awake at night trying to think about, well, there must be an answer to some of these things. But even people who go hunting, you don't use an AR-15.
Mm-hmm. No. Um, and might I say that, I mean, we're not constitutional attorneys, but there is much conversation around what the right to bear arms actually really means. And a strong argument to say that it does not include that for sure.
Correct. Because the right to bear arms also was written in the context of war.
Exactly.
So
Hundreds of years ago at that. And we have to see the Constitution as a living document. But I think that knowing that America is the country that has the largest prison population in the West and the largest, if not one of the largest, access to guns really says a lot about this country's value system. And for a shooting to be almost used as a political gain in some ways, it's just despicable. I mean, his street cred just went all the way up. We're talking about street fighting. Let's just be honest. To the point where 50 Cent put Donald Trump's head on his body at a performance while they played his song Many Men. Like, this is getting a lot of social media and just popular support. If not support, at least everybody's talking about it. And that is what he wants. He wants to co-opt and dominate the media cycle.
yeah, I agree. It's disturbing. I also think that, and this is something we have talked about a lot and will continue to talk about, is the well-being of young people or the lack of well-being of young people. You know, a young man who's well doesn't go out and try to shoot the former president of the United States,
Absolutely.
whether or not he has a history of mental illness, right? I mean, I think that's, people are like, he had no history of mental health issues. Well, first of all, how do you know? And second of all, okay, well, he clearly did, because this isn't a normal thing to do. And it just got me thinking so deeply about how unwell our young people are,
Mm-hmm.
and how are we going to help them?
I don't think anybody cares. Because if we care, we wouldn't be here. Obviously, individuals care. You and I care. Public systems do not care. And for us, coming from the kind of professions that we came from and the work that we currently do, we know that to be true. We have many, many policies in this country that are against family and child well-being. And in a time like this, all these political parties are concerned about, in my opinion, it's just power.
Right. And keeping power the way they want to see it,
It has always looked.
which which actually I think looks a little bit different for the right and the left. I mean, the way I interpret what's happening on the left is that the party hasn't come to terms with the idea of change.
Girl. So someone in my DM said something yesterday that I thought was so true. She gave the most like obvious example of how that is true. She said Biden, Pelosi, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. These are three people that should have stepped down, arguably a long time ago. Now, Biden 2020, I can't argue whether or not he was the right candidate to beat Trump. Clearly, he did. But RBG dying in that Supreme Court seat, knowing her advanced age, I have a hard time seeing as anything other than selfish, especially what we were up against at that time. So yes, there is a lot of infighting and work to be done. But I'll tell you who has that thing ain't together, honey. Because at one moment I said, "Am I watching a family reunion down somewhere in Nashville, Tennessee, between the country music? Am I watching actually the Democratic National Convention between the Teamsters, the union president's speech, or am I watching a KKK rally? God damn it! Like I couldn't figure out what I was watching." At the RNC. Now, I feel like you have said, I'm tapping out. This is against my mental health.
So it's funny because I actually am very, very interested. You know I am. And I I was saying to someone I loved yesterday, like, my goal for the next 5 years is to stay well through the chaos.
Hey, man, I love that.
And I mean, we were really good friends in 2016. I made myself so unwell um, throughout President Trump's presidency. I don't even want to share kind of all the things I tried. But, really, look, I'm really deeply worried, as much as anyone else, about what is going to happen. And I also know that me freaking out isn't going to change anything.
Very true.
And so, how do I channel my energy to effectuate the most change in the places where I can make the greatest impact? Me watching women in particular being taken advantage of and used as props by the Republicans is not that for me.
Mm, mm, mm.
What about you?
Oh,
We all
child.
do it differently.
Yeah, I've been watching this thing like it's a soap opera. Honestly, it's like, cliffhanger, and the next day you got to tune in. Because it for me is a number of things. Number one, the strategy, I'm so serious, is impressive. And I don't have to agree with anything that you say to be able to recognize what you're doing. Like, I see what you did there. I think some of the speakers have been absolutely prolific. Vivek Ramaswamy, he had the intonation of a Southern preacher. I'm telling you, like, it was very easy to get sucked in. They had a lot of personal narratives. So, as you mentioned, like the women being paraded on stage, one woman who lost her son at, I think he was 15 or 16, definitely a teenager, around what she called a poisoning. Basically, he was peer pressure into taking a pill. The pill was laced with fentanyl. He died immediately, instantly. As we know, fentanyl overdoses work oftentimes. And it's just really, really sad. But what was more sad for me was the way in which the right MAGA Republicans are using her as an example of how Biden and Harris have done nothing around the border and blaming failed border policies around not just her son's death from a fentanyl overdose, but also three other people who were on stage sharing personal stories about how their loved ones were just killed in horrific acts of violence by immigrants. So that was on stage, and young people. Amber Rose, Savannah Chrisley spoke. It is clear to me that they are courting a more diverse group of people, and they are courting young people.
Can you talk a little bit about Amber Rose? Because when I saw that, my initial reaction was, it's over.
And
Because, while maybe folks didn't understand what we were saying, maybe some people didn't understand what we were saying in our last mini episode, we believe deeply in our responsibility to vote and for anyone but Trump and Trump's policies at this point because they espouse violent, anti-misogynistic, homophobic, anti-Semitic, anti-immigrant rhetoric. We were not saying don't vote. We were saying let's think beyond what has been shown to us. But when I read that Amber Rose was speaking, I thought, oh my gosh, how did they get someone like she embodied so much of of aspects that we fought so hard for. So how is she seeing alignment with MAGA Republicans?
Girl, so much to say about this. So first, let me just say that while I will be voting, you know that I have not always voted, and I do believe that not voting can be a socio-political position and stance. And so I do want to give some acknowledgement to that for some people, although I understand that most people who don't vote are not coming from it from that perspective. And so I am clear that when I'm talking to activists and advocates to share my personal position on it, but also recognizing that sometimes abstaining from a flawed system might be what is in alignment with your principles and your convictions. Nevertheless, at this point, our backs are against the fucking wall. So yes, I will be voting. So, um, uh, Amber Rose. When you say that she represented everything that we have been fighting for, I think you're probably hinting towards her seemingly stepping into this space of like third wave feminism. She hosted the Slut Walk. She was speaking openly about these gender stereotypes and about claiming your bodily autonomy and your sensuality and your sexuality. I know me, myself personally, I'm not going to hold you. I was inspired. And I felt like looking at her is what I would have needed when I was younger, right? It was something about her being embodied and being empowered and being sexy and having had a background as a stripper and saying that she loved that time in her life that I was like, you're goddamn right. More of that, more of these kinds of stories and examples, because the media had always painted her, as we know, as a gold digger, as a thought, as a hoe, and that, you know, her claim to fame was having dated Kanye West. And so I thought this was her way of reshaping and reclaiming her narrative after he had done so much slut shaming about her in the media. And she had called Donald Trump a fucking idiot before. I think that is a direct quote in the past. So how did we get here was my question as well. And I think two things happened. One, what my younger sister reminded me of is that she was on a show called College Hill. Have you heard of this, Em? Let us know down below if you all have. But from my understanding, it's a show where they take celebrities, at some level of celebrity might be used loosely, and they put them in college. And they've never gone to college. And it's like these competitions and challenges around academics, right? And on the show, she got into a fight that went viral with a woman named Jocelyn Hernandez from Love and Hip Hop Atlanta, and then Jocelyn's Cabaret, because she said that she was not Black. And
She said that Amber Rose wasn't Black.
no, Amber Rose herself said that she was not Black,
Oh, okay.
specifically that she identified more with her white side. And they went back and forth about that. And Jocelyn reminded her that the world sees you as Black, right? And I didn't know that. And I think in some ways that kind of explained to me, because her father is the one who's white and her mother is Black. And I think of like direct African descent. But it explained to me also why on the stage she talked so lovingly about her father and how he had served time in the military and said that he was the one that changed her mind about Donald Trump. So I don't know if there's some internal biracial struggles that are happening there. I'm not here to tell biracial folks how to identify. But what I know unequivocally is that the world sees Amber Rose as a Black woman. The country sees Amber Rose as a Black woman.
And
And
as
her
a
whole
single
thing,
mother.
and a single mother, and she has a prominent tattoo across her forehead, and a former sex worker. As a gold digger, right? There are so many negative tropes that Republicans specifically hold value around that she falls directly into and is negative and negatively impact her entire existence from a poor neighborhood in Philly, all these things. But she said that that was the media lying, girl. what she said on the stage, also frightening, was that it was the woke media convincing her to dislike Donald Trump. And she said, no matter who you are, direct quote, it's all love here.
What does that mean?
It's all love. It's all love. And that there are no examples of Donald Trump being racist. Mexican, the wall, just made a statement about Black jobs at the debate. You remember that? That immigrants are taking Black jobs. So we know what that is meant to imply. The Muslim ban,
And
yeah, separating families at the border. I guess
calling Black people thugs.
I guess for her, those are not racist things because he's not actually calling someone a nigger, maybe. I don't know, but I would argue that it's even more harmful because we're being told to believe that what we're seeing is not real. And she has Black sons. So no matter how she will ever identify, her sons are by Black men. And that is just the that on that.
Two Black men.
Two Black men.
Which I only say because that's held against her too.
Exactly. And she's diddy bopping on this stage with that stupid fucking tattoo across her forehead. And I said we should have known she was unhinged then. When she
What
put
does
that,
it say?
it says bash slash for her son, Sebastian and Slash. Look, do what you will with your body. I don't care. You can get a penis enlargement. You can get an 11th toe for all I care. But there's something about that moment that we should have known she was a little off. And what someone said in my comments, and I thought it was so true, was that this is the difficult part when you are professionally pretty and professionally popular, when there's no real talent or skill set, that you will be paid by the highest bidder. And obviously, we know this is her being used as an influencer to bring in a new swath of people into the Republican Party. And for all the people who are saying, Amber Rose doesn't speak for me, she's the joke in the group chat, obviously, they were never trying to get to you. You were a foregone conclusion. It is other people because I live in DC and I see young people every day at Pentagon City wearing MAGA hats because they think it's funny. They
The
think
other
it's cool,
thing,
it's provocative.
yeah. So the other thing, and I really want to take it away from like her individually or the woman who was speaking about her son, is that what's so despicable to me is this idea of people's vote being bought and how the Republican Party has in many ways outsmarted all of us in
Yes,
convincing people that they represent their interests, where you're
yes,
like Amber Rose, like you, your sons, your bodily autonomy, your history of working in the sex industry, all of that is going to be up for like conversation and at risk of being your status as a single mother, your parenthood, like all of that is going to be up for debate if Donald Trump wins.
absolutely. Yeah. But I think there's something about her, you know, having access to money as the primary resource that people like her believe, absolves them from judgment. It's like the I'm not Black, I'm OJ thing. Or Michael Jordan saying white people buy Jordans too. This idea that you can have so much power and money and access to the things that it exempts you from ridicule and feeling the real impact of some of these policies. So, girl, if it's not you, she talks oftentimes about her time in Philly and still having friends back in the neighborhood. What does it mean for them, for those people? And I heard her say during a Larry King interview before he died that the whole reason she started stripping, Margo, she was underage, was because her mother was clinically depressed and they had no money and were facing eviction. If that is not someone who needs a social safety net, I don't know who does. So that was concerning. The other thing, girl, and then we're gonna get up out of here. JD Vance. What are your thoughts?
So he's just smart enough to be really dangerous.
Mm.
I think it's terrifying. I think he's a really angry person. I think he really hates women. I think he really hates Black people. I think he never felt like he belonged at Yale, so he hates elites. I think he's had a lot of trauma, which I have a lot of compassion for. But I think he's going to probably be the next president of the United States.
Oh, Margo, please. Please, Margo.
What do
No, no,
you
no.
think?
Oh, God. Oh, Jesus. Oh,
Sorry.
God.
I
Oh, God. Oh, God.
just like think about it.
That you're right. I think that he is being groomed. I think, unlike the Democratic Party, the Republicans have a succession plan that is very clear. I think the fact that this man called Donald Trump
Hitler?
cultural heroine, the American Hitler, has had so much to say about him publicly and privately that, to a friend by email that was then released. Lets you know, to your point again, about how people can be bought and the fact that he is vying for the presidency. There's just no two ways about it. Now, did you read Hillbilly Elegy, his book?
No, but it has been on my list. Have you read it?
I have not read it, but I know people who have, and I think I always assumed that he was a Democrat because of the book and the way that he
I did
talks about,
too.
from right, the class divide and the plight of poor whites who are from like coal mining territories in Appalachia in this book. And so knowing that he's the author of that, who talks about, while he made it, other people around him did not, and seeing him now in Trump's back pocket was another point of like bewilderment and confusion for me, but strategic. So the convention continues. We'll see what the Democrats have in their back pocket. This would actually be a lot more entertaining if it wasn't fucking real. So I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I'm watching like somewhere between a Tyler Perry movie and the drama of The Real World on MTV. A little bit of Love and Hip Hop because these Black folks keep being paraded across the stage, and like a doomsday film. And it's hard to
It's
continue.
hard to fully grasp it.
And
And
it
it's hard to not think it's a joke.
and it has everybody paying attention. I woke up this morning and my 13-year-old goddaughter had sent me like 3, 4, 5 TikToks sharing political commentary. Right? If for nothing else, I think a lot of people who do the work that we do as activists and advocates, we got a lot of talking points right now, right? We have a lot to strategize and to galvanize people around. And I just hope that we are paying attention to this moment. And by the way, someone asked us to talk about local efforts. So maybe our next conversation could be around that.
I would love that.
All righty. Anything else? Any last thoughts?
No, I think we just need to really stay on top of it. I think the RNC is still going on. The DNC is supposed to go on early August, so in 2 weeks. There's a lot going on, and I think one of the things our platform is going to try to do is how can we, as a community, stay engaged and stay well. So that's what we hope for everyone.
Stay engaged, stay well, leave your tips for both of those things down below, and we will see you good people next time.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to justUS. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to learn more about our podcast, be sure to check us out on our website at justuspodcast.com. You can also reach out to us there if you want to be featured on the show, or if you have a business or a product that you think would be a good fit for our audience. Thanks again for listening.